Hi, my name's KT Cannon Eager. I'm president of Friends of Liliuokalani Gardens. A little bit of my credentials, if you will. I am a founding member of the North American Japanese Garden Association, a public garden association that deals with nearly 500 Japanese gardens outside of Japan. This is in the United States and Canada for the most part, but around the world in many places. I'm also on the board of an online group called JapaneseGardening.org. They have a forum for hobbyists and professionals to meet and greet, where anyone can exchange their views and state their problems. You know, my koi died, what do I do? How do I train a pine tree to go over this gate? In Hilo, we have this cultural treasure. We have an asset that at one time the newspaper called the jewel, the crown jewel, at the entry to the Crescent City, which is what Hilo used to be called. At the entry because right there is Hilo Pier. And in the sailing ship days and in the steamship days, you came into Hilo Bay and you got lightered into Kaipalawa Landing or to Hilo Pier. And in 1917 through 1920, when Liliuokalani Gardens was constructed, you'd get off that small boat, walk across the street and into this fabulous garden that became as much of a tourist attraction for the Hilo area as Rainbow Falls and Volcano National Park. These were the things that were on people's list of things to do when they came to Hilo. Liliuokalani Gardens isn't just a nice place to visit. It isn't just a cultural treasure. It's an economic engine, as Japanese gardens are in every community where they exist. So my great joy is that the area is being paid attention to and being lifted up. Thank you for that. I have some concerns, as are some of our board of directors. I'm glad to see a couple of our board here in the room, but a couple who could not make it here this evening. Harvey Tajiri, who has some experience in the local and state political world and in business, pointed out that putting a hotel here was similar to a proposal for the placement of Hapuna when it was going to be built adjoining Mauna Kea. And he brought the concern up to the builders immediately and said, you're going to impede the local use of that beach. This placement here would reduce, shall we say, if not cow, a lot of the local use of this garden. I'm not sure just exactly where a fence would be, or if the Torii gate that was just reconstructed would be taken down, or what, you know, where that line is. But it seems to me that if this hotel were here or there, it would have that same synchronicity with all of the commercial area, with all of the hotel area, without casting a shadow, literally and figuratively, on this treasure that we have. We also had word from our board of directors that they really would like to see some attention paid to the host culture, and within here that there be a place for performance and practice of hula and a hula museum, if that hadn't been given some thought. Perhaps in this area that there ought to be a covered stadium that would fit, what was our board members figure, 7,000 people as an adjunct to this whole area. We know, you know, as George has schooled me, that we can't get the lift at the airport if we don't have the rooms. We know that there has to be rooms. on this peninsula of Waiakea, Ahupua'a, Maka'oku, Ili, and Kainehe. These are the old names that should be maintained also. This is a fabulous, fabulous treasure. A legacy from our queen, and it harks back to a time when the Japanese population in the kingdom was 43% of the population. That's what was going on here with the designers who have worked on various reconstructions of Liliuokalani Gardens following the 46 tsunami, following the 60 tsunami, are world-renowned Kinsaku Nakane, Nagao Sakurai, Kazuo Nakamura being the most recent who implemented the bicentennial addition to Liliuokalani Gardens in '76, and also Rakuen Happiness Park here and many private residential gardens in the area. I believe he lived in one of the hotels. And imagine that, this big Japanese designer who had a career in California, retiring to Hilo, living on the Banyan Peninsula, and giving us another section of this garden. It is a great benefit to our ecotourism, to voluntourism, for the kinds of new tourism that George was referring to earlier. Not the sun and the fun guys, but the guys who are looking to help the community that they visit. They're looking for ways that they can help. They show up in the garden when we're there cutting bamboo and say, can I help? Can I help dig the seaweed out? We also need to pay attention, I believe, to an existing industry that takes up several units in this area, and that's our fishing industry. If this ice house is going to become a community building, and I would love to see, as former Mayor Yamashiro had proposed, that it become part of Liliuokalani Gardens, and we can repurpose that as a tourist visitor center next week. But we still need to provide for the fishermen. There needs to be some facility that creates the ice that they need to keep their fabulous industry going. Now, perhaps that could be located here in the boat harbor. Perhaps in repurposing the power plant. That's where the ice was historically made. There was a tunnel, I'm told by one of the old ladies who had a vegetable store in here, a tunnel under the road that took the block ice later on from here over to the ice house, where it could be used for cold storage and for sales. There's an awful lot of history, but there's an awful lot of wonderful future to this plan. And I do see it as being a great economic driver. What our group is working on right now is celebrating the centennial of Liliuokalani Gardens next year. And in that plan are events to appeal to several different traveling groups. January, we'll have an art stroll that will involve Suisan, Hilo Bay, a plein air group in Liliuokalani, exhibit space in Hilo, Hawaiian, and Naniloa, and strolling through the area. There's a plan for a florist master class to be followed by a Sogetsu-style humongous arrangement in the gardens. There's a Japanese Gardeners Convention that wants to come to Hilo next year for the centennial. Somebody mentioned the people who come for wedding. You know, let's invite everybody who ever got married in Liliuokalani Gardens to come back next June and renew their vows. These are the kinds of different groups that we're appealing to come to Hilo, fill these hotel rooms, and be the economic engine for this area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we'll definitely be chatting with you a lot more.
Bill, what kind of a shadow is this cast?